Welcome, everyone. We're diving into Eritrean politics today.
Sounds complex.
It is, but fascinating. We're focusing on opposition movements.
Right, and this idea of Burj nehamedu.
Exactly. Using the work of Martin Plaut to guide us.
Oh yeah, his blog is a goldmine.
Isn't it decades of articles on the Horn of Africa?
Eritrea, Zimbabwe, you name it.
He really digs deep, which is what we aim to do.
Unpack the complexity of
Especially from 2021 to 2024.
a crucial period, it seems.
All right, so we've got several of Plaut's articles.
Laying it all out.
How the Eritrean Revolution devoured its own children, for one.
Wonderful title.
Then the Eritrean Blue Revolution.
More recent, I believe.
And even one about the Eritrean community in Denmark.
The diaspora's role is key.
Absolutely. So much to cover. Where should we begin?
Well, Burj nehamedu feels central.
You think so?
Yeah, trying to define it is a good starting point.
Makes sense. It's this intriguing concept
From what I gather, it's relatively new.
in terms of Eritrean opposition.
Right, and its aims are still kind of murky.
So we've got this central mystery,
And we're using Plaut to piece it together.
like detective work almost.
Make article a clue.
I like that. So what clues are we seeing?
What makes you think Burj nehamedu is new?
Good question.
Well, for one, Plaut's article on the revolution.
How the Eritrean Revolution devoured its own children.
Yeah, that one published January 6th, 2025.
Right. I remember.
No mention of Burj nehamedu there.
Interesting.
Stinks just it emerged later.
So that article gives us context then.
For sure. The history of opposition group.
And the struggles they faced.
Why a new movement might gain traction.
You're saying Burj nehamedu is a response to that?
Could be. Plaut's analysis shows a lot of internal divisions.
Within the older movements?
Power struggles, repression.
A tough legacy to overcome.
Exactly. That's why something new might be needed.
Okay, that tracks. So we have a possible time frame.
At least a starting point.
What else can we glean about Burj nehamedu?
From Plaut's work, I mean,
Are there more clues?
the Eritrean Blue Revolution article is interesting.
Published January 13th, 2025.
Right around the same time.
Doesn't explicitly mention Burj nehamedu, though.
True, but it explores similar themes.
You mean?
Reclaiming dignity, fighting oppression.
I see the connection.
Aligns with what little we know.
About this new movement.
The title itself is a call to action.
Eritrean Blue Revolution. It's striking.
Definitely. A desire for something better.
A break from the status quo.
Burj nehamedu could be part of that.
Advocating for a new vision.
It's a possibility.
We're getting closer to understanding it.
Bit by bit.
Even without direct references.
It's all about connecting the dots.
And speaking of connections,
We can't forget the diaspora.
their role is huge.
A powerful force for change.
And might shed light on Burj nehamedu, too.
Worth considering.
We have that article about the community in Denmark.
Uniting for a democratic future.
Think that diaspora mobilization is connected.
To Burj nehamedu, it's possible.
Plaut highlights their actions.
Organizing demonstrations, raising awareness,
Engaging with politicians?
putting pressure on the Eritrean government.
That sounds familiar.
Similar to what we think Burj nehamedu might be doing.
Inside Eritrea.
Yeah, could
Yeah.
they be working together?
A coordinated effort. It's intriguing.
Maybe Burj nehamedu is mobilizing internally.
While the diaspora applies external pressure.
Two sides of the same coin.
A fascinating thought.
We're seeing a potential link.
Between them.
Plaut's articles offer so many clues.
Without giving us all the answers.
It's quite the puzzle.
And we've only just begun.
This deep dive is just getting started.
Into Eritrean politics.
And the mystery of Burj nehamedu.
It's going to be a fascinating journey.
I can't wait to see what we uncover next.
Okay, so we've got Burj nehamedu as like this new force in Eritrean opposition politics.
Possibly emerging after January 6th, 2025.
Right. And there are those connections.
To the Eritrean Blue Revolution, the diaspora's push for change.
Yeah. But what is it exactly?
That's the big question, isn't it?
What makes it unique?
Compared to other opposition groups, I mean,
Right. Plaut doesn't give us a straight answer.
no, but we can look at the context he provides.
And try to deduce.
Exactly.
Make some educated guesses.
Like detectives. I'm into it.
So think back to how the Eritrean Revolution devoured its own children.
Plaut's analysis of the older movements.
All those internal divisions.
Power struggles.
Repression.
A heavy legacy.
Maybe Burj nehamedu is breaking from that pattern.
Trying to do things differently.
Learning from past mistakes.
Building a more unified front.
Possibly. They might be aiming for a broader coalition.
Bringing different factions together.
Under a shared vision.
That would explain the lack of clear information.
About their structure leadership.
It's intentional, then,
Could be a decentralized approach
to avoid the pitfalls.
of those more hierarchical movements
That's pretty strategic. Makes you wonder how they'd operate,
in Eritrea's political environment.
which is incredibly repressive.
Any opposition faces huge risks.
But maybe Burj Nehamedu is using that to their advantage.
How so?
Eritrea has tight control over information communication.
It could actually help them,
If they're staying under the radar,
avoiding attention.
the regime can't track them as easily.
It's like trying to catch smoke.
Precisely. Disrupting their networks becomes harder.
That makes the Eritrean Blue Revolution article even more interesting.
You think that could be them in action?
It's possible, right?
Those themes, reclaiming dignity, fighting oppression,
They align
maybe the Blue Revolution is their way of pushing for change.
subtly, without attracting too much attention.
Instead of big protests,
Public statements,
you're using different tactics,
underground networks,
building momentum from within.
and the diaspora's role comes into play here.
You're thinking about the Denmark article?
Yeah, Plout talked about their advocacy work.
Raising awareness lobbying internationally.
What if that's coordinated with Burj nehamedu,
Two sides of the same coin again.
the diaspora working externally,
Burj Nehamedu internally.
challenging the regime from both angles?
A multi-pronged approach.
It's a really interesting theory.
And it highlights the role of regional dynamics, too,
Right, Eritrea's involvement in the Ethiopian conflict.
as Plout describes in those other articles.
It could create opportunities
Or challenges.
for a movement like Burj nehamedu.
We were talking earlier about how the conflict might weaken the regime,
Stretch their resources.
create internal tensions,
Could Burj nehamedu capitalize on that?
gain more influence,
But the regime could also crack down harder.
use the conflict to justify their control.
Exactly. It's a double-edged sword.
The situation is very fluid,
A lot of unknowns.
even with Plout's insights.
But this is what makes it so fascinating
We're learning so much.
about Eritrean politics.
The opposition,
The diaspora.
regional influences,
It's all connected.
and Burj Nehamedu sits right at the center,
It's like a puzzle.
with missing pieces.
But we're getting closer to understanding it.
One clue at a time.
We've spent a lot of time theorizing about Burj nehamedu. But do we have any concrete examples?
Of their activities?
Yeah, anything from Plout's articles?
Not directly, no. But that article about the Eritrean community in Denmark might hold some clues.
The one where they're pushing for change within the Danish political system.
Exactly. Organizing demonstrations, engaging with politicians, trying to influence things.
Putting pressure on the Eritrean government.
From the outside.
Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting to think about that in light of what we've been discussing.
What about Burj Nehamedu?
Yeah. If they're operating discreetly inside Eritrea, could this diaspora activism be part of a larger strategy?
It's a possibility. Imagine Burj Nehamedu feeding information to the diaspora
Guiding their advocacy effort?
to maximize impact,
So a coordinated effort.
even if it's indirect,
Burj nehamedu working internally. The diaspora externally.
challenging the regime from both angles,
It's a pretty sophisticated approach.
especially for a movement we know so little about.
And it raises a really interesting question.
About how political movements function these days.
In the age of instant communication, globalization,
Do you need those traditional hierarchies?
to be effective,
Or can movements be more organic,
decentralized,
driven by shared goals and networks?
Burj nehamedu, if it's real, could be a case study in that.
A new form of political mobilization.
It challenges how we think about these things,
We need new analytical frameworks,
to understand these emerging movements.
because the old ways might not apply.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is where Plout's work is so valuable.
He helps us see these evolving dynamics.
Challenges our assumptions about political change. We might not have all the answers about Burj nehamedu,
But we've gained a much deeper understanding.
of Eritrean politics, the forces at play.
The potential for change.
So for our listeners out there, what's the key takeaway
I'd say we're witnessing a potential shift.
in Eritrean opposition politics?
The emergence of something like Burj Nehamedu suggests a new level of thinking,
Strategic planning coordination.
maybe even leveraging the diaspora and regional events.
It feels like things are in flux.
Ripe for change, but also uncertain,
So much complexity.
which is why informed observation is key
We need to pay attention,
to what's happening in Eritrea,
both internally and regionally.
to see how it all unfolds.
This has been a truly fascinating deep dive,
I agree, we've covered a lot of ground.
and I encourage everyone to keep exploring
Check out Martin Plout's blog.
for more insights on Eritrea and the Horn of Africa.
It's a treasure trove of information.
Thanks for joining us on this journey.
Until next time.